guys, welcome back to the channel. As automotive enthusiasts, we're constantly arguing about something. Import versus domestic, Coyote versus LS. One thing we can definitely all agree on though, the Porsche 911 Turbo is far and away the best car of all time. So naturally, when I found not one, not two, but three Porsche 911 Turbos at one single Copart lot, you know I had to come check them out. Which is why today we find ourselves at Copart in Rancho Cucamonga, California, to see if any of the three cars you see sitting in front of us are worthy of buying and shipping back across the country. Of course, we have my favorite generation, the 997, and this one right here has some super special goodies. Next to it, we have everybody's favorite redheaded stepchild, the 996 Turbo. And over here on this side, we have a car that seems to be convincing even the biggest Porsche hater I know that it might be worth taking a second look at.
I like it. I don't want to admit that I like it, especially on camera.
Well, to aid in my year-long mission to convince you to actually be a Porsche fan, I guess it's only fair that we start with this one. To me, it looks pretty good. You've been all over this thing already. What are you finding?
Those cars, it's obvious why they're at a Copart. This car, it makes you want to dig deeper and figure out why it's here. And I found some stuff that I don't like. Overspray. Damage. Oh. Overspray. Bondo on a brake caliper.
Wait, hold on, what?
Yeah, doesn't belong there, does it?
Well, it's not there anymore.
That is Bondo, though.
Okay, so that came off really easily. Oh my God. Feel the back of this fender.
Oh, wow.
That's a problem.
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
This lip here is all Bondo. What's supposed to be a pretty thin lip that I have my finger on right there, that's a 1/4 inch in Bondo. If there is some good news here, it's that the very inner structure, as best I can tell, that doesn't look damaged.
Last time I checked, Porsche taillights don't come with corners missing from the factory.
While we're talking crack, there's a crack, there's a crack, there's a crack. We have a cracked out quarter to bumper gap there. That's super tight. This, well, you guys can see that. I don't need to explain it. This is about what it's supposed to be. Hold on just a second. Am I seeing that right? That 911 Turbo badge, that's not straight. That's not straight at all.
Couple little dents here on this side.
This side actually does look good. Looking down it, there's just a couple dings. Yeah, there's nothing major going on like what was on the other side of it. And as much as we've found going on with this car so far, even this side over here, I'd say it's a 25, 30 footer. I mean, if we're back here, it still looks like a really nice car.
Not nearly as bad as the back, but somebody's definitely been into the front end too. The gaps aren't quite right.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's way too sharp. That's 100% Bondo right there. I promise you, Porsche bumpers are not supposed to have a 90-degree angle like that. That is built up Bondo. Oh, wow. That is straight Bondo. At this point, I might just be taking my natural position of defending Porsche. This side of the bumper, at least it looks like what a bumper should look like. It's rounded. This fender, that's not full of Bondo. That feels pretty good. I feel like this is the stuff we're not normally picking apart at salvage auction though. Usually we're talking about how bad is the frame. Well, this car is just, you know, has a little overspray, a cracked corner, no big deal, right guys? So I think we found pretty much all the bad with this car. Let's go ahead, put the Porsche redemption glasses on and try to find some good.
The spec is good. It is as subtle as you can get for a daily driver, weekend warrior Porsche 911 Turbo.
Turbo S dot, get it right. You guys know me, as cool as this color is, I do wish the interior was like a red or a brown or at least something unique. Don't get me wrong, black, carbon, it's classic, it's clean, but I just want a little more from a car this expensive. One thing I definitely am a fan of, however, is this power plant. We already know the thing starts, they drove it out here. Dot, do the honors, go ahead and crank it up.
You ready to hear this angry hornet's nest?
Just get in. Runs about as well as mine. I like it. Sounds pretty damn good. So for all the negative we just pointed out, at least it sounds good. The engine sounds quiet, the exhaust sounds good. You can't really ask for anything more.
We got a TPMS light.
I ain't worried about that.
Low fuel.
Minor details.
And that looks like it though.
Well, it's no 997, but it still sounds pretty awesome, right guys? 22 pounds of oil pressure. Everything's kosher as far as that goes. So as best I can tell, it looks like we have kind of a rough car. Depending on your standards, maybe you consider it a really rough car, but at the very least, it's not actively wrecked, I guess. It's definitely fixable, and the good news is, it's very obviously gonna be cheaper than if you went to buy a 2018 911 Turbo S anywhere else. Today, this car behind me, it's listed with a buy now of $135,000. Good deal, bad deal? I really haven't done too much market research on the newer stuff like this, so I'm gonna have to let you guys tell me. And in the meantime, I'm gonna do a little bit of research and see if I can figure out how it ended up like this. And of course, you know what that means. We had to run a vehicle history report on epicvin.com. It turns out it's very obvious why the car ended up this way. Once sold in 2017, slightly used with 1,950 miles, Norwell, Massachusetts. That's not the one we're after. This is the one we came for right here. You can see in 2021, this is what the car looked like. Wow. You can see right there, the rear quarter was hit pretty good, though it's nothing catastrophic, nothing that will lead me to believe it has any inner structure damage. Contrary to what I believed when I first looked at this car today, the primary area of impact, front driver's side, not even that rear quarter. So as bad as this may look, from what I can tell in these pictures, this was actually not that bad of a wreck. Even though we've pretty much covered everything there is to cover with this car, one thing I want to do in this video in particular, maybe it's because I'm a Porsche nerd, maybe it's because that 997 down there seems to have some really special options, but we're going to take just a second to look over the option list of all three of these cars. And a lot of this stuff looks pretty normal to me until we get down here, option S9Y, and that is of course European delivery. To buy a new Porsche and get to drive it around Europe for a couple days before you send it back to the States, how can you beat that? One thing I do know, at least on the Cayman GT4 I just rebuilt, the PDLS headlight option. These guys are by no means cheap in the Cayman. I can't imagine that's the case with the 911 either. One other thing though, it is fairly common on these newer cars, is the Porsche crest on the headrest, option XSC. And with that, it's time to move on, specifically to everybody's least favorite Porsche 911 Turbo, the old 996. Now, very important note, guys. We have special permission to do this today. You know in these videos, I'm usually not unwrapping cars. The lot manager here said, go at it, we'll rewrap them, no problem. Don't have to ask me twice. Wow. That didn't work like I thought it was gonna. That was pretty satisfying still. We'll go ahead and start with the positive, and that is that it's a 6-speed manual. Nothing kills an older 996 and 997 like being an automatic. The bad news, however, this car does not run. And for those of you guys who have a very keen Porsche eye, you guys might know this is the only Mesger engine here. That guy over there, you might have thought it had one, but that's a 997.2. Running, non-running, it's still a beautiful car with semi-low mileage, 21,123. The best I can tell so far, it's pretty stock, black with white wheels, which is definitely not a super common color combo. The interior black with a Porsche embroidery, just like the 991 over there. I do see a couple other special options, but we'll wait just a second on that. More importantly, what do we got going on here at the front end?
It appears this car was in a collision in this corner. I love just adding my wisdom to these videos to help the viewers understand why this vehicle's at Copart.
Wisdom?
Yes.
Before we dive super heavy into that passenger corner, let's see if we have anything else going on. We have a couple scuffs on the rear bumper there, not a big deal whatsoever. Typical 996 kind of stuff. Everything else looks pretty good. I'm guessing that at some point they couldn't get power to it because the sunroof is still open, which is the reason it had that wrap on it in the first place. Now, where do we start here? Obviously, this upper frame rail section there, that is way out of whack. It's supposed to be flat right under that fender line, just like the other side. More so than a head-on collision here, it really looks like something just caught it and ripped this whole thing up. Actually, that entire strut tower, that is massively moved. This is one of those perfect collisions that I always talk about. When you see a windshield broken from impact damage, it's harsh. Not that you really needed that to let you know that this is a bad wreck, but especially when you see a windshield broken in this many places. So what do we need up here if you were gonna fix this thing? And I'm not saying fixing it's a great idea, but if you know, just decided you really wanted to and didn't want to part it out instead. Obviously, you're gonna need all the coolers there. You're gonna need a front bumper. You might even need a center radiator, and at the very least, you're gonna need all the bracketry, even if that center one did survive. Though it has a bunch of stuff pushed back into it, and we can't get a clear look at it from down here. That frame rail, you can see back there, it's straight, just like it should be. When it comes out from behind all that stuff in the front, it's at like a 15-degree angle up. On a collision this bad, I wouldn't even be shocked if it got hit hard enough to do something to this frame rail, even though this side of the car looks somewhat decent.
That gap is definitely weird with the headlight. Either the headlight is moved around or something underneath is moving the headlight.
I know people joke about 996 fitment all the time. That's a little much. What are we working with there?
It's definitely not right. The door itself did take part of the impact. It's not just movement in the frame, but it is very tight all the way back through that section. And the lower part of the door is definitely out.
Gotta look closely.
Oh yeah, there's actually damage right there. You can see it's spiderwebbed.
All in all, I suppose that's not really too surprising considering what the front of the car looks like. Most of you know that I like to fix some pretty crazy stuff sometimes. This one though, this is gonna be a lot. Lucky for us though, that doesn't mean that it can't be a great parts car, especially once again, because it's a 6-speed manual. Just like the Carrera 4S, this 911 Turbo is all-wheel drive. Anytime you have an all-wheel drive 6-speed manual Porsche transmission, you are talking huge money. And when I say huge money, I mean 5 digits.
This does look like a really good parts car to me. After seeing the amount of parts that were generated from a car that we recently took apart that was a lot like this one, I believe that this would be nice for us to try and purchase for a parts car.
You had the twice specified parts car. Is that your like subtle way of telling me like, please don't buy this and try to fix it?
This is a great parts car that I believe would be great for the business as a parts car.
I do agree, but really when you look at it, I mean, it is fixable, I guess. I mean, the right person could fix this. Somebody who really loves Porsches and also really loves bad decisions. What do we have under here? A dirty bone stock Mezger. Though I could argue that of all the dirty bone stock engines you could possibly have, this one might be the best one.
I know we've said it 100 times in these videos that when we buy parts cars, we really like them to be bone stock. There's no stories, you don't have to worry about any weird, janky modifications. So I like this car even more as a parts car.
Add to that the fact that if you wanted to fix this car, you have a nice bone stock intact engine. You don't have to worry about that. You might have a lot to worry about up there, but at least the rear end, it's somewhat sorted. Excuse me for 1 second. I see the way you're looking at me. It's a California thing you wouldn't understand. About 5-6 years ago, I bought one of these cars. It looked like an awesome car. It ran over something and the bottom of the case was blown off. The one I bought, this whole lip was just ripped open. As you can see, there's no under panel, which is kind of weird. That particular 911 Turbo, it was my first 911 Turbo. I lost a ton of money on it and it scarred me for a little bit until, you know, I bought one for myself and then bought quite a few more. And from the top side, you can definitely tell there's some corrosion, there's some dirt. She's been sitting for a little bit, but overall, it just looks like a nice stock car. The gaps on the trunk, at the very least, are not bad. Well, maybe I spoke a little too soon. I got over to this side, all the way down here, talking about how, yeah, they're not that bad. And then I felt, oh, hold on. No, it's fine, the taillight's just not bolted in. I know I've been trying to run away from the obvious on this car for quite a few minutes now, but back up here at the front, every bit of suspension, you're gonna need to replace that. If we are lucky enough to have that be the only harness damage, you can probably get away with fixing it. It's not that bad. There's the obvious stuff, the fender, the hood, the front bumper. I shouldn't need to tell you guys that. You do have that door damage there. One other small note, this fantastic old piece of technology, the 6 CD changer. That is, of course, assuming you're one of the 5 people left on planet Earth that listens to CDs. We've covered pretty much all the damage. Now let's hop into the interior.
So it is a base stitching package car, and it does not have any of the painted center console. It does have headrest embroidery though, which I believe is pretty rare on 996s.
On that note, let's consult the expert to see what the actual option list is on this car. Dalton, take a guess on the base price.
Oh, in what year is this car? 2001?
2002.
2002. 72,000.
119,100.
Wow, I did not know that these cars were that expensive.
It's Porsche, baby.
I didn't think these cars were that expensive back then.
You're not cut out for Porsche life whatsoever.
Oh my
Not
goodness.
at all. We have ourselves a really light options list. It is listed as having the P78 sport seats. I don't know if the sport seat package is supposed to come with that or what. Otherwise, everything looks really run-of-the-mill. Black full leather, I mean, that's pretty much bare bones for this car, I would assume. The only other one that stands out, P71 right there, the design package. I'm gonna guess that that's why this looked a little special to me. I've seen the 911 turbos that don't have that don't have the aluminum shift knob, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe this silver gauge cluster that doesn't say turbo for some reason is also part of that package.
A little bit of wear on the interior, but it looks like it's got a lot of great parts in it that we will be able to sell as a parts car.
I definitely like the way you think. We'll see what it goes for when it finally runs at auction. Who knows what we'll end up doing with it, fixing it, parting it out, whatever. What's the old saying, the Porsche is your oyster, or something like that?
No.
Most of you are well aware that I bought pretty much the worst possible 997 turbo.
That's no bueno.
A few things that definitely do not come to mind when you hear the term worst possible. Carbon ceramic brakes, center locks, that little S behind the turbo badge, 997 dual projector headlights, forged line wheels. And last but definitely not least, 997 carbon bucket seats. Of all the 997 turbos I've ever seen at auction, this one, at least as far as options go, it's way up there.
So unlike the 996 over here, which is strictly a parts car, this car to me looks like it would be a good fixer. Are you thinking the same thing?
To me, it looks like a parts car. No, of course we're fixing this car. Well, not us. Maybe us, who knows? Somebody's fixing this car. There is definitely a lot to digest here. The options just keep coming. Now, I'm not positive if this is a Turbo S standard or like everything else in this car, it's a crazy option, carbon fiber OEM airbox.
What else can you see up here, Carrington? Oh, nothing, because everything's crammed in here. Fucking shit.
Well, maybe if you don't know what you're doing, you can't see anything here, but I see something.
It does have couplers back there, doesn't it?
A little more than that.
T-bolt clamps there, which are not OEM.
You are correct. I actually didn't even notice that. I was referring to something else. For those that may be familiar with this platform, you probably immediately identified that IPD plenum. I suppose we should have known when he pointed out the T-bolt clamps, but I did just catch a little glimpse of something through the bumper. We have ourselves what looks like a very nice set of aftermarket intercoolers. The bad news is, we can only get this bumper down so far. I can't ID a brand, but at the very least, it's a high quality bar and plate intercooler with what at least looks like billet intakes. I can't lie to you guys, this car has me pretty damn excited. On the rest of these turbos, we've waited till we looked the car over pretty good to run that options list. This one, I can't wait any longer. The MSRP on this car, it's one of the highest 997s I've ever seen. $179,910. And even with that MSRP, the options list itself isn't crazy. A couple things of note first off that are no longer applicable to this. The seats. This originally had ventilated 12-way power adjustable seats. I have no clue if the carbon buckets were ever actually an option for these. I'm gonna lean towards no. I think it was just the GT2 and GT3. Now for reference, I just saw this morning that a set of these seats out of a GT2, a US spec GT2 specifically, sold on Ring a Trailer for $18,000 some odd dollars. One thing that I've always loved, the leather wrapped sun visors. Now you know in my car, I have some fancy Alcantara aftermarket ones. But seeing what mine were before they were wrapped, compared to this nice soft leather with stitching all around it, this is phenomenal. Otherwise, this list is actually kind of thin. So I don't know what in here is aftermarket, I don't know what's OEM, I don't know what's not listed in the options list. but some things I'm noticing, which definitely could be standard type stuff in a 997.2, a 997.1 peasant like me wouldn't know that. Leather wrapped and stitched center console. Of course, being a newer car, we have a PDK, no more old Tiptronic transmission. Myself, along with many others, would say that this was the first time it really became okay to have an automatic transmission 911. Similar to the center console, this steering wheel is definitely a massive upgrade. I believe this is referred to as the Sport Design steering wheel. A 997.1 turbo that we got in recently had that, and we sold it for like $1,000. One other thing that, as far as I can tell, also was an option, though again, maybe standard on the Turbo S, center locks. You can see what they say right there, and this is definitely not an RS. So did they change center caps, or did they swap the entire suspension to like a GT3 center lock setup? Not to mention minor details there, but you have those pedals, they're aluminum, they actually look awesome. Way cooler than the ones in my car. I guess we'll start with the damage I just found. This headlight, you could probably, maybe, kind of, sort of get away with replacing a lens. I don't know too much about that. As far as the bumper goes, it's cracked there. The tabs here all broken. I think it's safe to say that while you could repair this bumper, they're not super expensive, so you should probably just go ahead and replace it. Oh, I'm sorry, was my Porsche badge in the way? Let me tuck that, I don't want to, flex too much. In addition to the missing radiator there, we have some slight, and I do mean slight, front tub damage. It's really not that big of a deal, and I'd suppose that you could probably just run it as is. My personal 997 turbo has some damage like that, and I'm just sending it down the road, no big deal. You will need to replace that shroud there that goes behind the center radiator. It actually does not look like you'll need a front bumper beam. It looks like whatever damage this took, it was down really, really low. Also, at least as far as the bottom corners go, it looks like these side radiators survived as well. One thing that's definitely not okay, however, this lower rocker. That's a big old dent there. I would be inclined to believe that you could just pull that out, fill it, and make that look fine. On the door, on the fender, those are just scratches that really aren't too bad at all. That's definitely a fix, not a replace. I'm actually personally looking for a set of these bigger 997.2 mirrors. Problem is, I wasn't gonna pull that off because I figured there's nothing we needed to see, but I'm glad we did. I really wanted to check and see if it scraped down the side a little more. That's a little more than a scrape. Fist-sized dent, fist-sized dent. More importantly though, that's not a great spot to be hit in. Definitely fixable, definitely not super fun to do so. We could probably get it done really, really cheap if we just hit up the dudes who did that 991 over there. One thing I am kind of on edge about, that's my entire finger. It's inside the door gap. It's also gonna be really, really hard to pick up on camera, but this door is out maybe a millimeter this way from the quarter panel. You see there's broken paint on the quarter, not a big deal. That's beat down there. I really don't know exactly what happened there, but I have one thing we can do to try to figure it out. So I originally asked to have it racked up here so we could see if there's any undercarriage damage. But first, I see a lot of different colors that you probably didn't expect to see under here. We have some blue there, GMG Racing Arms, some kind of blue sway bar. It is also GMG. A little bit more blue up there, Bilstein coilovers. The person who owned this car obviously had superior taste, as I happen to have those same coilovers myself. Some more GMG Racing goodies there. The rear control arms have those as well.
What is not awesome is this giant fist-sized dent in the floorboard right there.
Hold on. Whose fist do you know is that big? Is that the Hawk? Is that like 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger? That is a massive dent. I mean massive. Like, can you see up in there? That is a little worse than I first anticipated.
Oh yeah, it goes a lot more forward than it originally looked like.
And because of that, it actually separated from that bracket right there. I guess that's probably spot welded on somewhere. Not anymore. One other slightly minor piece of damage there, the front diff sensor. Fortunately, that's not as big of a deal as some of the other stuff we're finding. Now we can get a much better look at this front tub damage, and as suspected, it's really not that bad. I believe we've covered all the blue. Now let's cover the broken. Control arm broken. This control arm ground down pretty significantly. It may be broken at some point. Rear subframe broken. So we have a little additional damage there, radiator pipes. Otherwise, if you just don't pay attention to that big dent right there, the front of the car is actually in pretty good shape. I think we got what we need to get out of here. We found the mods, we found a bunch more damage. Now there's only one thing left to do. I do suppose while we wait for somebody to come grab it down, it gives us the perfect vantage point to look at the damage on this side. This quarter, this rocker, it's all pretty well dented in. You have that forged line sadly, and I do mean very sadly, broken. By no means is this car an easy fix, but it's definitely fixable, and a fixer I still believe this one is. You see the rear bumper there, it's all bashed in. The taillights, they're gone, you're gonna need that. That rear bumper beam has just a little bit of damage on the end. I think this is probably the perfect angle to show the scope of the damage on this side. You can see it's pretty rough all the way down, but again, the thing I keep thinking on this car is there's not one single catastrophic thing. Just like 10 not so great things. Let's quit playing around, let's quit looking at little dents. Let's hear this baby run.
These are definitely not as aggressive as the GT4 buckets.
That's lame.
There's a lot less right here.
I see that.
GT4 is a lot higher on your thigh.
What is the mileage? It is very, very sunny in California here. It is 56,425. Let it rip. This thing sounds healthy. Stock, but healthy.
It's good. It's got good oil pressure. It's got TPMS light because of the tire issue, but it all looks fine.
Now there are a couple things stuffed behind this seat, so I'm pretty tight. I've never been a fan of the way these ones look, but I mean, they're still great seats, right? These are awesome.
These would be very comfortable to drive on a regular basis. The GT4 seats are a little bit much for a street car.
They're awesome too. Before we give it the customary rev, I want to know your guys' opinion on these seats. I don't think they look anywhere near as good as the newer generation carbon buckets. Dalton likes the way they feel better. What do you guys think? So stock, but so good. I'm feeling really good about this. I'm feeling really good about the cars we saw today. Now the question is, are there any of them worth buying? I guess it's time to let the joke go. That 996 turbo, definitely not a fixer. Dalt was right all along. It's a parts car, but it might be a very compelling parts car for us. So that's one I'll be watching closely. The 991.2, out of my price range. I don't have a need for it right now. Not something I'm interested in buying at this time. Though once again, $135,000. If it's something you want, go check it out on Copart's website. That brings us to the last one of the day. The one I like the most, the one I was most excited about, and the one that Dalt just got out of really well, actually. The leg's getting better, isn't it?
This one's a little bit of a cheat because you don't have a roof.
This one is really, really hard to price. Selfishly, there's a lot of stuff I want off of it. Some center locks, at least 3 out of 4 corners. I could have that for my car. Carbon ceramics that are in good shape. One awesome piece that we could just sell off because I don't need them. I already have the aftermarket Recaros, the carbon buckets. There's a ton of money in this car from the parts standpoint. There's also some validity to fixing it, though for us at this time, I don't think, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, Thought, I can't afford another project. The only thing more thin than my schedule is my bank account, so it's not happening for me. I presume you're not buying this car either at this current moment?
You know I ain't fixing one of these junk boxes.
So what it's gonna boil down to is what does it go for at auction? If I can justify it from a parts standpoint, we'll buy it. But on that note, we have a very busy week here in California, tons more to do, including right now, we're heading about a mile up the road to check out CSF radiators. Maybe pick up a part or two while we're there. Can't say it any better than that.
The motor's in the front where a motor belongs. It still has turbos. It's got 4 doors for more access to your kids in the child seats.
I wish it was a little brighter, though I do like this. Can you unlock the door, please? As far as the interior, god damn it, is it not unlocking still?
That's my bad.
Okay.
3 jump boxes later.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest to start. We're gonna leave that part out of the video, I guess, even though we just told you. But not even that rear quarter. First aid kit. God damn it. Earlier. And for those of you guys who are really up, fuck man. Though it has a, God, stop like unfocusing. How hard is this? A little bit more blue. What the is going? Jesus. Green green. We have ourselves what looks like a very nice set of aftermarket. What the